The prospect of mass unemployment and a prolonged economic crisis in the wake of the pandemic has prompted the Chancellor to unveil a series of measures amounting to £30 billion. He set out the details in his summer statement to the House of Commons. Rishi Sunak said that firms would be paid £1,000 for each employee brought back from furlough and kept in employment until at least January of next year. For the under-25s, there's a £2 billion Kickstarter scheme to create thousands of job placements and get young people into work. Stamp duty has been temporarily abolished on property sales up to £500,000 in England and Northern Ireland. There'll be a £2 billion Green Homes grant to make homes more energy efficient. VAT will be cut from 20% to 5% on food, accommodation and attractions from next Wednesday until the middle of January. And this August, there'll be 50% off meals in participating restaurants worth up to £10 a head from Monday to Wednesday. Our political editor, Kuenssberg, looks at the detail of the Chancellor's summer statement.
Good morning, it's 6 o'clock on Wednesday the 8th of July.
Where we live, now a place to work. Where we travel, now full of abandoned platforms. A different look where we spent our money. Where we shopped, still often shuttered up. The reality, millions of jobs are at risk. So where the decisions about the economy are made.
Morning.
The Chancellor might be forgiven for glancing nervously at the cameras.
Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Rishi Sunak's words today awaited far and away from this chamber.
People are anxious about losing their job, about unemployment rising. We're not just going to accept this. People need to know that although hardship lies ahead, no one will be left without hope.
The government will not keep paying the wages of millions of people whose jobs have been on hold past the autumn.
Leaving the furlough scheme open forever gives people false hope that it will always be possible to return to the jobs they had before. So today, we're introducing a new policy to reward and incentivise employers who successfully bring furloughed staff back. A new jobs retention bonus. Our message to business is clear. If you stand by your workers, we will stand by you.
Perhaps as much as £9 billion for businesses who make it, a cut to stamp duty, and for parts of the economy shuttered by the crisis, a big cut in VAT.
The best jobs programme we can do is to restart these sectors and get our pubs, restaurants, cafes and B&Bs bustling again. So I've decided for the next 6 months to cut VAT on food, accommodation and attractions.
Complete with, for the first time, an offer to entice you to spend.
For the month of August, we will give everyone in the country an Eat Out to Help Out discount.
But the Chancellor has his eye on a lot more than helping you with a holiday meal deal.
It is an unambiguous choice to make this moment meaningful for our country in a way that transcends the frustration and loss of recent months. It is a plan to turn our national recovery into millions of stories of personal renewal.
He can offer.
Hello.
The Chancellor can't know if business will really bring back all of their staff.
Is that what yours now?
Can he tempt you back to the still empty spaces where much of the country makes its living? And will coronavirus roar back to ruin his plans?
The very first thing the Chancellor must do is prevent additional economic damage due to the slow public health response of his government. As we've seen throughout this crisis, the failure to match soaring rhetoric with meaningful action has consequences for people across our country.
Politicians can try to lure the economy back to life, but it's business that will really determine how far the economy falls.
Companies are going to be faced with making hard decisions about laying people off, knowing that recovery is going to take time. You think about the hospitality industries, think about tourist businesses. In many respects, they're going to be facing 3 winters. They've come through a winter. There's not much that's happening for them today, and we're going to go into the winter later on this year. They need support right through to the spring of 2021. And if not, they're going to be making people redundant.
I don't think this meets the moment. We've got a historic economic recession. and that's linked to the climate change challenge. And there's going to be the challenge of Brexit. This is a massive challenge for our economy, and Liberal Democrats would like a much bigger package.
For now, the Tories are willing to borrow and spend in a way that Labour might be more comfortable with, but a different Tory Chancellor put a marker down.
Interest rates will not stay low forever, and eventually we will need to bring back our national debt under control in order to sustain a recovery and continue to create jobs and to keep taxes low.
Closed doors have cost the economy dear, jobs disappearing day by day. The Chancellor promised big cheques to prevent the worst. But today was about how to spend, not about how to pay. Kuenssberg, BBC News, Westminster.
As we heard, many businesses have been struggling with that difficult decision on what to do with their furloughed employees in the months ahead. Now, the Job Retention Bonus Scheme is offering to pay £1,000 to employers for each furloughed employee brought back in and kept in work until the end of January, though the employee must be paid at least £520 a month. The Chancellor also pledged a £2,000 payment to firms for every young apprentice taken on in the next 6 months. Our political correspondent Alex Forsyth has been assessing reaction today in the East Midlands.
For some businesses, the doors are still shut. The trampoline sadly still at this park in North Nottinghamshire. Caught between leisure and indoor sport, this is a sector desperate to get going again, not least for the sake of the staff.
I'm excited to get back open, but then there's also the dread of what if we can't open.
Employees here are all on the furlough scheme. Welcome support, but that ends in autumn. And unless this business can open soon, even the promise of a bonus for every job saved might not be enough.
It'd be nice to have. But it'd be difficult, and definitely keeping everybody on the books would be sort of, really hard to sort of do. We've got sort of between 20 25 members of staff here. Hopefully we don't have to get to that situation where we are, letting people off and things, but it's always a possibility, which is quite sad.
Being open is key.
That's it, yeah, that's what we want to do.
So many businesses have been hard hit. High street names already shedding jobs. Retail, hospitality, often sectors that employ young people, many now struggling for work in a tough market. Like Jack, unemployed since lockdown put paid to his planned job at a lettings agency.
Jobs have been added 2-3 days before on job sites and they've gone already.
He will be eligible for the government's new scheme, subsidising 6-month placements to get young people working, with so many worried about unemployment in the long term.
So that 6 months would be a perfect stopgap. I mean, I was only hoping to be a month or two out of it, and here I am 4 or 5 months later nearly. So it's a real worry in my case that even I could be long-term unemployed, and I've not been out of a job since 14.
Skills, training, study schemes, all part of today's attempt to stem unemployment, particularly for this generation. There was extra money for apprenticeships, but some want more, fearing new work placements without more skills support won't lead to long-term jobs.
Anyone that undertakes an apprenticeship is going to have some fantastic skills at the end of that, and I don't feel that a 6-month placement on minimum wage without training would be doing justice to our economy, really.
Some do feel secure, even in these tough times. Leon and Matthew's HGV training has been on pause, but they believe there'll still be demand for their skills.
I'm feeling confident, if I'm honest. I don't think I'm going to be affected that much.
They're still making us feel secure and that we've got a job to go back to.
For many, though, the future is uncertain. Crucial will be whether the government's plan is enough, not only to save some jobs, but create others. No small challenge. Alex Forsyth, BBC News.
So the hospitality and tourism industries, among the hardest hit by the pandemic, are being given a helping hand with a temporary VAT cut and a half-price voucher scheme next month. But will it boost those businesses still struggling? And will it encourage more people to spend some money? Our correspondent Sarah Corker has been talking to people in Manchester.
The lunchtime rush in Manchester city centre. Outdoor space is helping to keep customers apart. But for some places, socially distanced dining just isn't financially viable. And so the government's Eat Out discount is designed to boost trade and entice customers back.
I dare say we all like a drink, we all like to eat out. So I think it would persuade people to go out.
And it would persuade you even though you've been on furlough?
Even more so, yeah, I reckon.
Would that
persuade you to go out and eat?
Not me particularly, because a lot of my family still need to be shielding, so it's a bit not okay with us.
The Eat Out to Help Out discount means people can get up to £10 off per head if they dine out between Monday and Wednesday in August. It doesn't include alcohol, and businesses can sign up via a government website. They then claim the money back, and the funds are back in their bank account within 5 working days. This cafe owner told me the extra support would make surviving this year more likely for many traders.
It's really good to incentivise people to go out and spend within the industry. Hopefully it'll give the industry a really good boost and small businesses can thrive as opposed to just get by.
And from next Wednesday, VAT will be cut for 6 months. Some hospitality bosses, though, say the government could have gone even further.
I think it's to be welcome that there's a VAT cut down to 5%. I don't know why they didn't make it 0%. That's what was really should be called for. A lot of paperwork, but hopefully it will be passed on to the customer and people will be able to dine out cheaper and not regard it as such a big expense.
For those venturing out tonight, it is still a very different dining experience. Manchester's famous nightlife nowhere near back to normal. But these measures are music to the ears of the UK's 3.2 million hospitality workers. Sarah Corker, BBC News in Manchester.
Let's talk about the furlough scheme, which will end in October, because that's been the biggest state economic intervention since the Second World War. What will the Chancellor's new measures cost, and how will the Treasury pay for all of this? Our business correspondent Davey has more details.
Big numbers for a big plan. The message on Rishi Sunak's Twitter feed was clear. But is it enough to stop the clock from turning back to the 1980s, those lost years of mass unemployment and hardship? At present, the government is paying the wages of 9.4 million employees and that of 2.7 million self-employed people. As those schemes are wound down, the challenge is to prevent that turning into massive layoffs. But the current plans cost £70 billion. The package replacing that is worth less than half as much, at most £30 billion. He's hoping he's incentivised businesses and consumers and workers themselves to pick up the slack. It's a gamble, but it's a change that had to happen.
You need to move gradually to some different things, so supporting people into new jobs, helping young people into new jobs rather than just keeping the whole economy in aspic, which is what the previous set of decisions were really all about.
Now, some help has been targeted at the under 25s. 1 in 4 of them are currently on furlough schemes. But potentially the biggest sum of all, up to £9.4 billion, has been earmarked for staff who are retained of all ages once these schemes end as a bonus. But the actual number depends on how many are kept on. Now, some say this could merely defer layoffs, potentially push out, delay that spike in unemployment, which some economists fear could top 9%. So there could be much work yet to be done in that autumn budget, in particular on job creation. We may also learn more in the autumn about how he intends to fund all of this. It's not just about jobs. Today it was also revealed that the government has poured an extra £49 billion into public services to help fight this crisis, including £15 billion on PPE. That makes it even more likely that the spending shortfall could top £300 billion this year. So we may have to see changes to tax or even benefits like pensions to plug that gap. Borrowing may not be enough. It's easy to be popular when you're splashing the cash, less so when you're asking for it back. For the Chancellor, the toughest choices may lie ahead, and that's even before we talk about the risks of a second wave. Darshini David, BBC News.
Let's talk a little more with our business editor, Simon Jack. Simon, we've been through lots of the measures here. I'm wondering, first of all, how has it all been received, and what for you is the biggest area of concern out there?
I think it's been widely welcomed. VAT cut, tick. A lot of people asking for that. Extra help for job creation for younger people. But the central question, the spectre that haunts this economy, is how many of the 9 million people who are furloughed will have a job by the end of this year? And that is a stark calculation for business. Are they prepared to shoulder an increasing burden of the furlough cost, have it withdrawn at the end of October, continue to pay wages till the end of January, all to get a £1,000 bonus? Maybe the sums don't add up. And I think Rishi Sunak, when he said it's not all about economics, it's how we respond, we have a moral duty, I think he recognised in stark economic terms the carrot at the end of that process is probably not big enough for business to bite.
OK, Simon, many thanks. Simon Jack, our business editor, with the business perspective. What about the political context? Let's go to Westminster, and Laura's there for us, Laura Kuenssberg. When we look at the political rationale behind this statement, Laura, what's your reading of that?
Well, Hugh, this is a really big moment. At any other time, this would be seen as an absolutely enormous, gigantic, whopping price tag for any government to put into the economy, and a pretty strange thing for a Conservative Chancellor to have announced. But, you know, we're not in normal times. One Cabinet Minister said to me tonight, we have to sow the seeds to bear the fruit. And I think today confirmed that, at least for the time being, coronavirus has brought in an era of big government spending and big government intervention in the economy. But there are two really important things to bear in mind. Right now, with interest rates rock bottom for the foreseeable future, there's no immediate political clamour to decide and to say how and when all this money is going to be paid back. That's a complete transformation of the economic debate that we had a few years ago. But that time will come. And there are private shivers on the Tory backbenches about spelling that out. And we won't know any detail of how the Chancellor plans to pay this back until the budget in the autumn. And the second thing to understand is, although the Chancellor is willing to write enormous cheques, you won't find a single MP in Westminster who isn't still worried that potentially a big number of their constituents may lose their job, despite the scale of the interventions, despite all the Chancellor's words in the Commons. It is clearly the case that unemployment is going to go up. And what has happened here today is not a radical set of moves being unveiled by a government intent on transforming the economy for the better. It's a series of expensive measures by a Treasury trying to manage the hardship that is coming down the tracks. And given the uncertainty about the virus itself, one thing we can be sure of tonight, this is very unlikely to be Rishi Sunak's last words on this very difficult subject.
Laura, once again, many thanks. Laura Kuenssberg there with her analysis at Westminster.